Most distilled spirits that are labeled as whiskey in India are a form of Indian-made foreign liquor, commonly blends based on neutral spirits that are distilled from fermented molasses with only a small portion consisting of traditional malt whiskey, usually about 10 to 12%. Outside India, such a drink would more likely be labeled a rum. According to the Scotch Whisky Association's 2013 annual report, unlike the European Union (EU), there is no compulsory definition of whiskey in India, and the Indian voluntary standard does not require whiskey to be distilled from cereals or to be matured. Very little Indian whiskey qualifies as whiskey in the EU owing to the use of molasses or neutral alcohol, limited maturation if any, and the use of flavorings. Such spirits are, of course, considerably cheaper to produce than genuine whiskey. Such molasses-based blends make up 90% of the spirits consumed as whiskey in India, although whiskey wholly distilled from malt and other grains is also manufactured and sold. History: the drinking of Scotch whisky was introduced to India in the 19th century, during the British Raj. In the late 1820s, Edward Dyer moved from England to set up the first brewery in India at Kasauli. The brewery was soon shifted to nearby Solan, close to the British summer capital Shimla, as there was an abundant supply of fresh spring water there. The Kasauli brewery site was converted to a distillery, becoming India's first distillery, which is currently operated by Mohan Meekan. Production of alcohol from grain was hampered by shortage of extra grain, due to food shortages. Allowing grains to be used for alcohol manufacture is a controversial subject in India, due to poverty and alcohol's ambivalent reputation. Economic liberalization in the 1990s led to the moderate reduction of import duties, to about 35%, giving distillers access to better technology. Amrit single malt whiskey. The manufacture of whiskey from malted grains in India was pioneered by Amrit distilleries in 1982. Amrit distilleries began procuring barley from farmers in Haryana, Punjab and Rajasthan, in addition to molasses, and launched Prestige blended malt whiskey in the canteen stores department in 1986. The first batch of single malt whiskey was ready within 18 months. Because India had no culture of consuming single malts at the time, the company did not consider bottling it as a single malt. Instead, the whiskey was blended with alcohol distilled from sugarcane to produce Markantosh premium whiskey. According to Neelakanta Jagdale, the alcoholic beverages industry was not a priority in the country. Although we received help to a certain extent from the Central Food Technological Research Institute (CFTRI), we had to find our own ways to learn about improved distilling methods. Amrit Distilleries launched Amrit, the first single malt whiskey to be made in India, on the 24th of August 2004. The production of Amrit single malt whiskey was the result of the distillery having malt that was aging far in excess of what was needed for its medium-range Prestige malt whiskey. Initially, Amrit aged malt whiskey for around a year before blending it. However, due to changing customer preferences, less malt whiskey was being added into blended variants. Surinder Kumar, the master blender at Amrit Distilleries, has estimated that because of climate differences, 1 year of barrel aging in India is equal to 3 years of aging in Scotland. John Distilleries had been making blended whiskey since its foundation, but decided to manufacture single malt whiskey in 2008 in an attempt to enter the premium end of the market. The first bottling of Paul John whiskey, branded Paul John Single Cask 161 whiskey, was launched on 4 October 2012. Economic liberalization also led to the entry of foreign companies to the market, whose brands were seen as more authentic and attractive by affluent Indian consumers. This led several Indian manufacturers to acquire foreign liquor companies. Under Vijay Mallya's direction, the Indian company United Spirits Limited acquired a number of noted whiskey brands and distilleries in Scotland, including Dalmore, Isle of Jura, and White & Mackay. In 2012, Diageo acquired a 55% stake in United Spirits. Some of the Scotch whisky produced is used in Indian blends. White & Mackay has since been sold as of 2014 to Emperador, a company based in the Philippines. In terms of volume, India is the biggest consumer of whiskey in the world. It has a complex tax structure with taxes leveled by both central and state governments. Import taxes are applied by the central government on imported spirits. State-level taxes are levied by each individual state, with taxation levels and methods varying significantly. The sale of alcohol is also prohibited in some states. Whiskey accounts for nearly 60% of the Indian-made foreign liquor market. India accounted for nearly half the global whiskey market by volume in 2010. The market is generally divided into segments based on price. The consumption of native distilled, molasses-based whiskey in India is encouraged by tariff barriers of up to 150% that impose a significant markup on imported whiskies in India. Imported Scotch whisky bottled under its own brand names makes up only 1% of the total market share. The substantial tax markup on imported whiskies has been categorized by the Scotch Whisky Association (SWA) as pure protectionism. Indian distillers accuse the European Union of erecting its own sort of trade barriers by means of rules that forbid the marketing of molasses-based spirits as whiskey. Malia has objected to the EU's refusal of entry to molasses-based whiskies, claiming that the imposition of British imperialism is unacceptable. In a lawsuit brought in India by the SWA, the Delhi High Court in April 2006 enjoined Indian whisky manufacturers from labelling their product with the words "Scot" or "Scotch". However, on 27 May 2008, the Supreme Court ruled in favour of Distiller Code India Limited, allowing the company to keep its Peter Scott whisky brand trademark. In 2019, India was the world's second-largest Scotch whisky market by volume, 131 million 70 centilitres bottles consumed, and seventh-largest by value, £166 million.